Greetings, Andy here again, and this is part two of a little mini series I kicked off last month. So I'm calling it 10 Gateway Albums. So in each episode of this, the first I did the 70s, I'm skipping the 80s, and I'll explain why again in a minute. This episode is the 90s, and then I'm going to look at 10 albums if I can keep it down to that from the current century in the last one. Now, I've set myself some rules for this. And rule one is the band or artist must have produced at least 4 albums. And however many they've produced, I've got to have at least 4 of them. And the Gateway album is the first album that I bought of that band. But also, I must have bought it at the time, or roughly, within a year or two of issue. So, and that sort of really is why I can't do anything from the 80s, because, I did dip out of new music in the 80s, to be honest. Doesn't mean to say I don't have any 80s albums, but I can't say that of the bands, bands like Talk Talk, I picked them up much later. So I don't have any from the 80s, which I can say I got into them in the 80s. I've got 4 of their records and they produced at least 4. So hence I'm skipping it. And so we're going to kick off in the 90s. And once I've got 10, I'm going to start with one which doesn't quite fit the rules, but it's quite important. And that's because I sort of got out of music or new music in the 80s and started really listening again and thinking, I like that in the very early 90s. And then, of course, CDs were out at that point. So I started thinking about buying records again. So I bought myself a little, a unit, what they call a music centre or whatever, with a CD player, started buying CDs. So all these records in the 90s, I originally bought on CD. Though a number of them I have sort of subsequently bought bought a vinyl version of it. So where I've got a vinyl version of it, that's what I'm going to show. But the reality is, all of these I started off on CD, and they all fit those rules, bar the first one, because the very first album on CD I bought, and therefore the first album which really sort of was a gateway into me buying new music again. It was a bit of a gateway to a genre, shall we say. And I'm going back to 1990, and this was the first one I bought. And it is Mazzy Star and She Hangs Brightly from 1990. It's their debut. It's obviously the wonderful voice of Hope Sandoval and David Roback, I think, was her partner in here. Some great tunes, and this was my introduction to dream pop, which were also eventually, though Mazzy Star weren't really shoegaze, they start moving into that sort of direction as well. I noticed recently that they're doing a reissue of this in a couple of months. I might well get that because I love this album, but I'm more likely to pull it out on vinyl than go and search for the CD. So that's not one of my 10, but I love it anyway. So let's start with my first of these, and I'm going back to 1992, and this is one I have on vinyl now, and it is R.E.M. Automatic for the People, and this was their 8th studio album, so very prolific, and obviously produced loads subsequent to this. I saw them a couple of times as well in the early 00s. And it is, there's the track listing, everyone knows them, there is and Everybody Hurts. It is absolutely superb, brilliant album. It's touch and go, depending on what mood I'm in, whether I think this is my favourite of theirs or sometimes New Adventures in Hi-Fi. Another, now a dummy, I was going to say, because it is a dummy, a debut. And that's Portishead. Now you might say, well, Portishead only had 3 records. 3 studio albums plus the live one, live in, I've forgotten what it's called now, in New York, which I have and had at the time. And also I've got the solo stuff from that Beth Gibbons has produced. So I'm counting this one. It was also my gateway into trip hop, which I really subsequently liked. With Massive Attack, which we may well come to, and DJ Shadow and the likes of those. And this is another all killer. It's just every single track on here: Mr. On, Sour Times, Stranglers, It Could Be Sweet, Wandering Star, Numb, Roads, Pedestal, Biscuit, and Glory Box. Just all superb. That was in 1994. We move on a year, 1995, and the first album I bought of Radiohead. This was, again, this is often my favourite. It's difficult to pick a favourite of Radiohead because there's such variety. But this is the first one, another all-killer. But then most Radiohead albums are, and I like every single one of them, but I still go back and listen to this. As I say, it's one I've subsequently bought on vinyl. Now a CD, and we're moving on. Same year, 1995, and of course we're now in the Britpop era. Now Radiohead weren't Britpop, but this band were, but quickly after this moved out of it, and that is Blur. And their fourth album, The Great Escape, the first one I bought of them. This possibly has, obviously it's a big hit of Country House. Charmless Man is good, but I think possibly my favourite Blur song of all time is The Universal, and that was the one when they were playing that on the radio. I absolutely loved it, and went out and bought the CD. Their subsequent one to this album was their eponymous album Blur, which by then they had moved on this album. They were actually already moving away from that sort of Britpop feel, but the next album they'd left it all behind. So that's that, and I'm still in the world of Britpop in 1995, and I do actually have all four that they produced, and that's I've got four of them anyway. I don't think they produced more. They might have done. Oasis, of course, and this to me is by far and away the best. Definitely Maybe was good. This was brilliant, and then it was downhill all the way after that to me. Well, some of Noel Gallagher's solo, sort of solo, what's it called? Flying Birds? I can't remember. Are okay. Nothing really has done a great deal for me since this record. Another all killer. In fact, I think all these albums are no killer without exception. So. And we move on a year. I should have said at the beginning, by the way, I'm doing this sort of in vaguely chronological order. So I might not have the exact order of release where you've got two in the same year, but another 96, there's a little run of 96, and on CD is the Manic Street Preachers and Everything Must Go. Which, as I say, it's the gateway I got. I had heard bits from their earlier stuff, individual tracks on the radio, but this is the first one which sort of really hit the mainstream, and it was superb. Loved it there. I've not gone out of my way to look for it on vinyl, but neither have I seen it. So if I saw it at a reasonable price, I probably would get it. Fabulous album, Manic Street Preachers from Wales. And another debut, and that is, and also 96, and that is Eels, and Beautiful Freak. Love this album when it came out. Novocaine for the Soul, absolutely superb. Susan's House, but every track on there is brilliant. Mark E. Everett, known as E, and Eels, I think they were a trio at that time, but it's essentially a vehicle for Mark Everett, and brilliant album by Eels. And I mentioned Massive Attack, and they've been going quite a long time, and I had been enjoying stuff I'd heard, but hadn't sort of gone out and bought an album until Mezzanine came along in 1998. So this was their third studio album. The first, I think, came out in 91. And I've got, obviously I went back and rebought them, and just absolutely love it. Another all killer, and it's got possibly one of my favourite openings of any album, with Angel, Rising Sun and Teardrop. Those three just bring this beautiful record into play, and absolutely superb album. And where are we? Number 9, and still in 98, and that is Air, the French electronic duo Air and Moon Safari, La Femme d'Argent, Sexy Boy. Absolutely brilliant album. But this to me is their best. And finally, and last but very much not least, is an album I have talked about quite a bit. I didn't discover it in 98 when it first came out, but it was a couple of years later. I think it might have been either late 99 or 2000. So it was sort of within a couple of years of it. It was a new album to me, so I wasn't sort of discovering something years and years later. And that is Mercury Rev and Deserter Songs. This was a real wow. It was a type of music I hadn't really sort of listened to before. And, just absolutely superb. Opus 40, Hudson Line, Holes, The Funny Bird, Delta Sun, Bottleneck Stomp it finishes, which is brilliant. So that was number 10, and plus 1. So there you go. That's my 10 gateway albums from the 90s. And next time, well, not the next video, but sort of next month, I will do the third and last of these, where I will do stuff from the current century. So thanks for watching. Cheers.